Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We're trying to keep some time here, so let's keep this going. Our last guest speaker before the public forum. So here we go. Joe Bean Keller. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I gotta stand in the shade because it's starting to get a little hot out here. My name is Joe Bean Keller. I'm gonna take you back on a journey because my story goes back 24 years. 24 years ago, my son, Deontay J. Keller, was shot in the back by then Portland CERT officer Terry Kruger, who is now the police chief in West Lynn. My son was murdered. He was handcuffed in the backyard, left to die for 40 minutes as they did not allow the medical to come in to treat him. So my story goes back a ways, but as Michael was saying, how when you change your life, God does things in a different way. He makes things different. And God gave me faith and patience. And he said, you just be patient and your story will be heard in the right time when it's necessary. Because some stories aren't heard when they're not heard at the right time. They're heard because someone wants to tell the story. But sometimes that story has impact when it's on God's time. And 24 years later, my story is very important. But not only is my story important for myself, but it goes along with other families. Because since that time, from 24 years going up this way, there have been a series of police murders. Kendra James, James Perez, Byron Hammock, Aaron Campbell, all of these people, plus more that have been murdered by the Portland police and others. My friend Andre Washington was supposed to be here. His brother was murdered by the Portland State Police, and fortunately justice just started happening because they are going to be taking the guns away from the Portland police at Portland State University next year. So they will be losing their guns. So this is where the story goes. But before I really get into my story, I'm going to let you guys listen to this music video that I have. I created a music video. It's called Before There Was Trayvon, because until the Trayvon Martin murder, many people were not really tuning in on police murders because of the fact that they didn't think that they really took place. And then at the same time, you have to remember, 24 years ago when my son was murdered, there was no social media. Only media you had was the news media that told the story in which they wanted you to hear. So the story that you wanted you to read, because they had the power of the pen, and so no one else can change that story because of the fact that whatever they said seemed to be true because that's what you heard. So I'm going to play this song first, and this song is going to take you down a little journey, and then I'll come back. The song is called Before There Was Trayvon, and you can go on YouTube and find it as well too and share it.
Before there was Trayvon.
Listen closely to these words.
Dedicated to Deontay J. Keller, who was shot by Portland, Oregon police in 1996.
Before there was Trayvon.
And all the others across the country who lost their life in senseless violence to the man in blue.
License to kill, they get away with murder. Plant the evidence at the scene, throw away burner. They'll say they felt their life was in imminent danger. Another sister or brother slain by a stranger. Murder one of us every 28 hours. Undeclared warfare, that's white power. If you're indigenous or African American, they use the media to assassinate your character. For it to make sense, I'd have to be convinced they're predators amongst us with malevolent intent. I could have a confrontation at a moment's notice. Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Keaton Otis, James Perez, and Kendra James, Deontay Keller, too many names. Oscar Grant and Aaron Campbell. How we gonna set a different example?
January 29, 2010, Aaron Campbell was shot in the back after being distraught from losing his brother earlier that day. March 28, 2004, James Perez was shot within 24 seconds after being stopped for failing to stop at a stop sign and driving in the corner.
The state of the nation is pacifying the masses with sadistic tactics. Communities live in fear, wondering how many will die this year and how many more remain silent in the face of violence. People hold their breath, knowing it's liberty or death. Headhunters, decapitating movements, breaking nations into fragments, and race is said to be coincidence rather than evidence that the state of the nation is extermination. Blood of fathers, brothers, sisters, mothers staining America from Oakland to Providence. Forced silence, government-funded violence. Armed forces are targeting melanin once again, and homicide is justified when it's genocide. But how many more black folks are going to be crucified for the sins of America?
There was Trayvon.
May 23rd, 2003, Kendra James was shot inside her car on the Skidmore Bridge by Portland police.
Before there was Trayvon.
February 22nd, 2002, Byron Lennox Jr. was shot in Motel 6 after having a confrontation inside his motel room.
On February 28th, 1996, my son Deontay J. Keller was pulled over by Portland police officer Terry Kruger. Unfortunately, he jumped out the car and ran. Unbeknownst to him, a shot was fired, and he was shot in the back. But he continued to run, even though no shots fired call was called into the dispatch. Police found Deontay about 3 houses down in the backyard, lying face down, but he was still breathing. They handcuffed him and called for medical. Medical arrived at 2:23 a.m., but the police would not allow medical to come in until 3:41. Within that time frame, Deontay died.
There was Trayvon.
They could have saved Deontay if they would have allowed medical to come in.
Before there was Trayvon.
How much longer are we going to continue to go through this?
Before there was Trayvon.
There are too many people dying at the hands of the police.
Before there was Trayvon.
Condolences to the Trayvon Martin family.
Before there was Trayvon.
And all the others across the country who have lost their lives to the man in blue.
Before there was
Yeah. Before there was Trayvon, all that was taking place here in Portland, Oregon. I hope you heard those words, because this is what we've been dealing with. So, and it's really interesting how life, like I said, comes back around full circle, and how God works in His own timing and stuff. And so, and how the Michael Fesser case brought a whole new light to my son's case. But what it did was took a person who had been in the police force, because not only did the officer that killed my son, Terry Kruger, kill my son, he killed another gentleman by the name of Ronald Ripley 5 years later. Ronald Ripley had some mental issues, came to his door with an umbrella because the police were called out to the house for a disturbance. He came to the door with an umbrella. Kruger decided to shoot him because he thought it was a rifle and killed that man. I spoke at that man's funeral. That was so heartbreaking for that family, because they just called the police because they needed somebody to come out there to help them. But instead of them using their knowledge to be like a counselor or somebody that could come and talk and defuse a situation, he chose, because he seen it was an umbrella. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, an umbrella cost a man his life. But then, so what I'm saying is now how this comes back is that sometimes we had officers they're crooked officers. There are bad officers, there are bad seeds that have been there, and Kruger has been one of those for many years. What happened was he pushed the envelope. He kept going. Sometimes you can keep going, you got a job, you can, be with your good old boys and be with that crony situation, but he pushed the envelope, because what happened with Michael Fesser had put him in a position, as he had became the police chief of West Lynn. He put himself in a different position. All of a sudden, it opened another light. But what happened was that prior to him even being hired as the chief out there, I have this story that's called The Untold Story of Deontay J. Keller. And what it is the murder, the conspiracy, the cover-up of the Portland Police Department. You can go to DeontayJKeller.com and it will pop up. All this information is their information, because 3.5 months before it was time for me to go to court on a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, my attorney would ask Judge Janice Stewart to dismiss him after 3.5 years of preparation. But then to come to find out, the city attorneys had been taking care of him to make sure that the case didn't go the way it was supposed to. So when they set the initial case up, it was already veered to the right with false information. So what happened after that, the judge, because I even wrote a letter to the judge, to Janice Stewart, saying, and wanted to try to meet with her to discuss this. And she said, no, I'm not interested. We're gonna allow him to do this, and we're not gonna change your court date if you cannot have somebody to come and represent you. So within that time, we're gonna have to try to dismiss it. So basically that's what ended up happening. But they dismissed it without my signature. So what happened, since I wouldn't sign off with the city attorneys, they put a judgment against me, a financial judgment against me for thousands of dollars. This is how crooked, this is how this system goes. I mean, so this goes back a long ways. It's not something that just started. And there are many people that are involved in it. And that's why when we talk about defunding the police and everything else, we got to look big at the bigger picture, because the police department is only one part of this whole picture. I mean, it goes to the judges, like I said, the district attorneys, and many others that are connected. So if we don't connect the dots, we're going to never make all the changes that are necessary. So what ended up happening is that Mayor Tom Potter, 8 years later, he dismissed the judgment against me, thank God, because he's a personal friend as well too. And he looked at that and realized that it was very bogus. But the untold story is actually the information that came, because after my case was over with, I went to go get all my information from the attorney. What he did was I went there and got 4 big boxes full of papers. What he did, he just threw all the papers in there together. Everything was all mixed up. So I guess he must thought I was just some unintelligent black man or something like that. Did not realize that I've been an activist in the city of Portland for over 45 years. I am 63 years old right now, 63 years young, let me tell you. I'm going to thank you. I do look good, don't I? Thank you. I get to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning and so forth to get my workout in. And so, make things happen. But you got to take care of yourself, and I had to do that because God still had some plans for me. So I didn't have time to get old, because I had a mission, basically. But what happened was that when I got all this information, I guess he didn't realize that what I did, I cleared my living room and dining room out of all the furniture, took all of these pieces of paper and spread them out, spread them all out. And then a friend of mine, an associate that had worked with me, we took them all and put everything together, all the pieces of paper that need to be connected. And after we did that, come to find out, it was a completely different story. It actually, like I say, it shows the conspiracy, the cover-up, and the murder. They had placed a gun. My son was supposed to have threw a gun after being shot in the back now. He threw it all the way across, over a 6-foot fence. It went across the whole yard of a house, hit a garage, indented the garage, dropped down into a garden. But then it was absolutely clean. No dust, no nothing. But then there was no fingerprints on the evidence as well either. Stuff. So so there's a whole. So you guys can see this story yourself. You can read it if you want to, But there's so much that goes along to it. There's so much that goes along to it, to the point to where right now there's a gentleman I'm working with. He used to be the appellant defendant for the state of Michigan and the state of California, goes by the name of David Goldstein. And for anybody who doesn't know who the appellant defendant is, his job is to take a case and take it to the next level. So if it has to go to the next court, that's his responsibility. And somehow he ended up with, before not even knowing, he sent me a letter basically that we need to bring Kruger up on murder charges. And so that's what we're in the process of doing right now. We're going to be bringing Officer Terry Kruger up. He's off right now with the DOJ investigation, but the untold story is actually a part of that investigation as well too. And so there are many people looking at it. So a whole big can of worms opened up once the Michael Fessler situation happened. And so what I was saying was that what Terry Kruger did, he pushed the envelope basically, because he said, well, if I try one more job, I'll get back in there, because what he did was they had a negative cop that was in there already dealing with Michael's situation, and they wanted to hire another cop that had the same standards. And the standards were, we're going to be brutal, we're not going to be right, we don't want, and that's what they did. And so that's how Terry Kruger ended up being hired. But I found out that before he was hired, that the city council had received an email that got kind of disturbed to many of them, and come to find out that the untold story was sent to them somehow. I don't know who even sent it to them. And this was over 2 years ago. So let me get some water, please. Yeah, over 2 years ago, before he was hired, somebody anonymously sent the untold story, and that disturbed the city council. And they chose that they decided that they really did not want him to be the chief, but then the city manager overrid the decision, because that's the city manager's responsibility to, with the final decision. So she overrid the decision, and they hired him anyway. But like I say, he should not have tried to push the envelope too far, because, like I say, he's been sitting comfortable for 24 years, almost 25 years now, after murdering my son and another man. And I guess he thought he was going to get away with it. But now he's in the hot seat, because every day when he goes to sleep now, he's wondering, am I going to be a criminal? Am I going to go to jail? Am I going to be behind bars? Or am I going to have to be in my prison blues? Because that's basically what's going to take place. And it's kind of like he's a black man now, because what happens is with black people, sometimes we always feel like a criminal. Nobody, even if we're not a criminal, we can be driving down the street and get stopped. For some reason, we just get this criminal feel, because we assume that somebody's going to look at us that way, because that's where the racist issue started and stuff. And so now he's in that same situation to where, now we can look at you as a criminal. So that's where God is really very good at that right there. But going back to the story of Kendra James, Jahar Perez, and all these other families, I've worked with them after the police had murdered their kids. And Kendra James, if you heard the bass player in the song that we just played, that's actually Kenny James, his Kendra's dad. And that was a hard thing for him to do, to actually sit there in my recording studio and play that song as we were reproducing it. Basically, in the song is about your daughter that was murdered that you can't see anymore. So, and see, not only did I lose one son, I always have to throw this in, I lost two sons. So the one bullet that killed my son actually killed two, because my younger son, he ended up developing lupus from the stress from losing his brother. So for 13 years, he battled with lupus. For the last 3.5 years of his life, he was on dialysis 3 days a week, going to dialysis at 30 years old. 3 days a week, basically, to the point to where he couldn't take it no more, and I had to pull the plug on him. But that's what the stress did from losing his brother. So one bullet kills two, and that's going to, when I write my book, that's going to be the title of my book, One Bullet Kills Two. It's going to tell the whole story. I mean, this story is so deep. I mean, I can sit here and explain it to you and talk to you guys all about it and so forth, but it would take a long time. But it's easier for you just to go to the Untold Story at Deontay J. Keller. Just if you Google Joe Bean Keller, it'll pop up as well too. Just like if you Google Michael Fesser, all the stories will come up. But what I'm doing now, as you see this bucket, at the end of this month, on August the 28th, Reverend Al Sharpton has put together the March on Washington. It's the 57th anniversary of the initial March on Washington that Reverend Dr. King did. And it's called Take the Knee Off My Neck, in which a majority of the families that have lost people to police violence are going to be going there, and we're meeting, and it's going to be a march centered around that, but now we're adding additional things to it as well too. And I have been doing a fundraiser. I've raised over, I think probably about $16,000 so far at least. I've raised over $16,000. It's going to be 26 of us that are going, paying for everything, all the expenses, the round trip. So I got the airfares already situated. We got the flights ready and booked. We got the hotel, got them booked at the Hamilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., basically. And it's funny because I'm not used to all these new taxes and stuff. And so this is where I'm pushing my last minute push here, because when you live in Oregon, you don't really deal with taxes. I spent $5,300 on 13 rooms. $5,300 on 13 rooms at the Hamilton. But then when I got my bill, it was $7,020, because the rest of that was taxes and fees. That's how, from $5,300, the taxes were 14%. I mean, this is, when you're coming from Oregon, I mean, you just like, if it costs 59 cents, it costs 59 cents. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you're not used to that. But like I said, I have no problem with that, because I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to put the money. I'm putting my own money into it as well, too, and like I say, I don't want these families, because these families, I'm taking 12, there's going to be, 11 families actually that have lost their loved ones to police that I'm taking. And I don't want them to have to pay for anything. I don't want them to pay for any airfare. They're not paying for no airfare, no hotel. I want to feed them. They're gonna travel together. I have a minister that's flying with them. Minister JW Friday be flying with them. I have a videographer that's gonna be and capturing the whole moment itself from the start and to the finish as well. That's gonna be going. And so this is gonna be a monumental trip itself, and it's gonna be experienced because, like I say, this is the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. My mom is even going. I said, Mom, we got COVID out here. She said, baby, I done lost my grandson, and I'm gonna be there. She's 85 years old, but she says she will not miss it for the world because of the fact that she needs to be there to represent her grandson and stuff. And so this is what we're doing right now. I have more information I'll be passing out to you guys. I have a GoFundMe. I take the checks, I take cash or anything. You can go to GoFundMe. I got Venmo, all those different things. I will hand out some little flyers to you as well too. But it's very important, and I'm glad to see. I guess I have to say this. It's nice to talk to white privilege. I must say, it's nice to talk to white privilege, and I say that not out of disrespect, but out of respect. I said that out of respect because of the fact that you guys are the ones that are going to make the difference in making change. Because what happens is sometimes we can get so comfortable in our own skin that we don't really pay attention to all the things that are taking place around us because we stay within our zone. But once we start looking out and seeing the world as the world actually is and what's taking place, sometimes we got to change. We have to change, and we have to change for the kids. Because, thank you. Yes, we have to change. We have to change for the kids because the kids nowadays are not living the same way that our foreparents may have seen things. They don't think the same way. So when they sit at the dinner table and so forth, and they start hearing, like say, some racist conversation or something, to them, they're trying to figure out now, why are my parents talking like that? So we have to help them just as they are helping us, because it's a new day now and times are changing, and it's all about love. Because if we can learn to love each other as people, we can learn to love each other as one another itself. Because we can have respect for any color, any race, anybody who has a conversation that's necessary to share. Because we all, like I said, you all came out here because you want to learn something. And we can educate you just as you can educate us, because whenever we get to the point where we stop wanting to learn, then that means that we must have it all figured out. But how can we have it all figured out in a world that's changing every day? A world that's changing every day. So I just want to thank you because, like I said, I came out here last time, and it's really funny. But last time I came out here, it was pouring down raining. So, I mean, it was pouring. I mean, it poured. We was under that little shed there, all huddled up and so forth and stuff, and it was pouring. And now we come, and it's a 100-degree day. So that's how good God can turn things around. And I want to thank you very much for just coming out and sharing. And I would love to hear some of your stories and your concerns. And if anyone has any questions for any of us that just spoke, or if you just want to get on the microphone, let's see here.
I have a question about your website.
Yes.
What's your website?
You-
Is it like a landing page for all of your Venmo and GoFundMe?
It's GoFundMe at Joe Bean Keller.
GoFundMe at Joe Bean Keller?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just go. And I'm gonna hand out some little flyers for everybody as well too, so that you'll have all the information. But like I said, it's very important. And if I can get your support, I appreciate it. I'm not here soliciting funds and so forth because I'm gonna make it happen regardless. Because these people are, and my commitment is my commitment. But like I said, I don't want these families to pay for anything. I don't want to pay for any meals or anything that they have to pay for. I want them to be able to get on that plane, get with the preacher, talk about it, because the fact that when they get on that plane, it's going to bring up a lot of memories. It's like I said, this is a march, and they know that they're going somewhere where they're going to be surrounded by other people that have lost loved ones and so forth. So this Saturday, next Saturday, I'm having a picnic out in one of the parks, in which I'm bringing all the families together, because these families don't actually even know each other. So I'm going to bring them together first, so we can have a meet and greet, and they can share our itinerary information and things like that about the trip, so they can get to know each other. Because once they travel together, because like I say, they're all flying on the same flight together. They're all going to get off in the shuttle. We've got a private shuttle. We'll pick them up together. We're all staying in the same hotel together. So we're all going to go to the march together. I've been in contact with Reverend Al Sharpton, so they know that we're coming. So they know we're coming. We're already, and one of his guys are actually getting ready, should be calling me back shortly as well. So we're setting up all the arrangements. So we want to make sure that, because we're going to be up in the front with the rest of the families, and maybe I might get an opportunity to even speak at the rally. And that would truly be an honor for me to be able to speak at the anniversary of the March on Washington. So thank you very much. And Trey, thank you very much for just having me come back out again.